How is everybody?
Awake and ready.
Yay! Happy Thanksgiving weekend to all of you. So our topic this morning reminds me of the story of a pastor who was walking along the street one day, and across the street he sees this little boy trying to ring a doorbell. And, he was just a little bit too short for the doorbell, so he's jumping and jumping and jumping, and he just can't reach it. So the pastor decides, I'm going to help this little boy. He steps smartly across the street, comes behind the little boy, and places one hand on his shoulder, leans over and gives the doorbell a good solid ring. And then he looks down at the little boy and he says, and now what, my little friend? And the little boy looks up at the pastor, smiles, and he says, now we run. And so it goes. Our topic is karma this morning. We are here today because we've had many lifetimes. We've probably tried it all. We've rang that doorbell. We've tried all the fame, the fortune, the exotic trips, all of that. But none of us really brought us that joy. It was never lasting. It never brought us that joy, that true joy that we were seeking. We're going to be having a India pilgrimage satsang this afternoon after service. But I was reminded of a story from one of the earlier trips to India. And this woman, they were in a boat and they were waiting for a friend to come back. And they said, where is our friend? And somebody yells, she's out shopping. And then somebody said, what is she buying? And then someone else yells, more. It's just never ending. And it can be discouraging, when will this end, But a devotee once asked Yogananda, he said, sir, I don't feel that I have very good karma. And Yogananda became quite stern. He said, it takes very, very, very good karma to even want to know God. So here we all are today with very, very, very good karma to even want to be here. So, normally we begin with a reading from Whispers from Eternity, but I thought I would read from the Essence of Self-Realization. Oh, Melissa, can you get a copy of the Essence for Stephen here so they can read along? Thank you. This book, I remember when Swami Kriyananda was writing it in 1990. I was at the village, which is where Ananda started over 40 years ago. And it was a week long of classes. It's called Spiritual Renewal Week. And every morning, Swami Kriyananda would write some chapters, and he would come to class, and he would read the chapters that he just wrote. So I have a special fondness for this book, but it's so easy to read. It's all wonderful excerpts of Yogananda's teachings. It's divided by different topics, and he has a chapter on karma. So I want to read from... This is page 99, and it's Working Out Karma. And this is a conversation that a disciple is having with Yogananda about this very topic. And it all seems so complicated, lamented a disciple. I can see that karma and reincarnation belong together, but when I think of all the actions one initiates in a single lifetime, and then multiply them by God knows how many more lifetimes, I'm appalled. The interactions of cause and effect must be literally endless. So they are, agreed Yogananda. As long as one tries to work out his karma in the outer world, one desire leads to another, and that one still to others. Every desire must be fulfilled, every action brought to completion. Even trivial desires, pursued the disciple in dismay. What about some little wish that I might have had years ago for an ice cream cone? Even that, replied Yogananda emphatically, any energy that you put out, however slight, must return to you eventually. The disciple flung his hands up in despair. Then it all seems quite hopeless. As well might one try calming the waves on the ocean. It is a big job, I grant you, Yogananda said. Still, it isn't nearly so difficult as it looks. For ask yourself this, what is it that causes the waves to rise and fall in the first place? It is the wind. Without the wind, the surface grows calm automatically. Similarly, when the storm of delusion abates in the mind, the waves of action and reaction subside automatically. So what you must do is still the waves of your mind by deep meditation, and then in meditation rid yourself of the consciousness of ego involvement. Once you cease seeing yourself as a causative agent, the waves of delusion may continue to rise and fall outwardly, but you yourself will no longer be affected by them. Would it be helpful, inquired the disciple, to stop acting altogether? Just try it, Yogananda smiled. You'll see that it simply isn't possible to stop acting. The Bhagavad Gita teaches us that no one can escape from action, karma in other words, by refraining from action. But the Gita also teaches an invaluable method for escaping karma. What it recommends is nishkam karma, desireless action, and that is action without desire for the fruits of action. If you act thus, you will gradually attain freedom from the bondage of karma. During activity, never feel that it is you who are acting. Act instead with the thought that God is the doer. Pray to Him, Lord, Thou art acting through me. Even when you make mistakes, make Him responsible for them. He likes that. Of course, you mustn't deliberately do wrong and then lay the blame on Him. But if you do your best, but still fail, give your failure to Him. Cling to the thought that you're ever free in yourself. This is the way to final freedom in the Lord. Of course, other things are involved too: devotion, meditation, divine grace, and so on. Oh, amen. So what about those other things? He spoke so beautifully about that desireless action, but what about devotion, meditation, and divine grace? What happens with devotion? We learn to what? Open our hearts. We talk about how it's so important to open our hearts in our practices, in our daily life, so that we could feel God's presence more easily. So when those waves of likes and dislikes come, when those actions happen, when all those things that come, if we can't feel God's presence, we're lost. You know, we need to, having that devotion, opening the heart, and we all have that devotion. We think we don't have it, but it's like a brick of gold. No matter how deep you bury it in the sand, right? It's still a brick of gold. Or we all have that natural love of the heart. Sri Yukteswar, who was Yogananda's guru, said it's not possible to take the next step on the path without that natural love of the heart. And again, the gurus, the great ones, they come to remind us that we all have this natural love of the heart. But through different techniques and practices, we learn to open the heart. We learn to develop devotion. What are some of the ways that we can do that? This morning we chanted. Chanting is half, Yogananda would say it's half the battle. Somebody else would say it's halfway on the spiritual path. Chant when we can open our heart. Somebody too has said that the spiritual path is the length of our spine, from the base of the spine up here to the point between the eyebrows. If we can open the heart, we're halfway there. So chanting is half the battle. Looking at photos of the masters, anyone that's sweet, sometimes when you look in their eyes, you see such sweetness. You see just love. Yogananda said, when I'm gone, only love can take my place. Reading books of the masters, reading their lives, filling ourselves with those devotional thoughts, listening to music, surrounding ourselves with other people who love God, awakening that love. Okay, the first step on the path, first step in helping us to deal with our karma, work with our karma, because again, those waves are going to happen. But that devotion can be constant. That love for God can always be there. Again, not acting deliberately, but just realizing even if you fail, so beautiful in this reading, we can give that to God. The second one, meditation. We really, as it said in our reading, we need to cling to that thought that we are free. We're not all those waves. We're not all those things that we think are holding us back. But we have the tendency of how many lifetimes, right? So many. A man was heard praying to God. He said, "Dear God, if you can't make me a better person, don't worry about it. I'm having a really good time the way I am." You know, I mean, it's just those waves of likes. Oh, just. But again, if we can remember our devotion, we can remember to love God. Remember to do our meditation. I know that's so hard, but that's why, again, we come together for that support. And Yogananda would talk about environment is stronger than willpower. But if we can gather again with people who can support us in our practices, if we could meditate together. For those who practice Kriya Yoga, Yogananda promised, if we do one Kriya the way it is taught and perfectly, and with all of our heart, all of our devotion, it will free us of 1 year of karma. Isn't that enough incentive to want to do your meditation every day? Boy, to get rid of all of those years, those habits and tendencies. We have these powerful tools that the masters brought us. So meditation, so devotion and meditation. And then never forgetting divine grace. Yogananda promises, he said, "To those who think me near, I will be near." To those who think me near, to those who just think of me, I will be there. I will be there. And again, in this reading, even if we fail, okay, even if we fail, cling to me. Remember that we have the grace of the Guru, we have the grace of the Masters, the grace of God. We have our effort that we have to do on our spiritual path. We have to make the effort. You know, we have our part of the equation, 25%. We need to do 100% of that. But then the rest, we have so much in our favor. We have so much supporting us. And we have each other, holding each other up. And so Daiva will also be talking, but it's so beautiful that our affirmation is on gratitude, to be grateful for all the ups and downs, for all those waves, for all those dislikes, for everything that we're trying to just work through. We have the beautiful affirmation to remember that. And when we're grateful, what happens? Our heart stays open. Again, keeping our hearts open, filling the cup with devotion, meditating, praying deeply, remembering the masters are with us, guiding us, supporting us, loving us. And amen. That's it. It's a good thing he goes second because he can mop it up.
I got news for you. I got nowhere to go from here. It is clear. You know, that poor guy who was talking about, "Lord, if you can't make me a better person, don't worry. I'm having a great time as I am." If you could get it to stick like that, you know? The problem is it just keeps moving. It just keeps moving. One of Ganga Mata's sayings that has been famous for me for as long as I've known her, because she said it very early on. I think she might have been thinking of her partner at that point, but she said, you know, she was talking about people, but it's true of everything. You know, you just get the whole package. You get the parts you like, you get the parts that you enjoy and you feel good, but then you get all the rest of it that comes along with it. And there's no real separating out all the rest of it from the parts you like. And it's really the problem with this world. It's the problem with creation for us if we don't have the right understanding and approach to life. Because there are parts of it we're conditioned, all of us, through the senses. But each one of us has conditioned ourselves through endless incarnations of action and reaction, of likes and dislikes, of this feels good, I like this doesn't feel so good, I don't like it. A friend of ours, I've told the story before, but a friend of ours went off on his, endlessly desired vacation to the Caribbean, you know, the tropical waters, the balmy seas, the wonderful sunshine, the beaches. And he got there, and 2 days later, a hurricane washed through the area. And he came back saying, I never want to go there again. You know, it's just the likes and dislikes They drive us, they compel us and drive us endlessly. And, if we do not practice, I don't have a lot to say this morning. Gratitude, if we're wise, we will not hold gratitude only for the things that we are conditioned to enjoy. But we will practice gratitude for everything that comes. There's an interesting affirmation. I will go, from Yogananda, I will go forth in perfect faith in the power of omnipresent good to bring me what I need at the time I need it. Now, which one of you does that affirmation or thinks of that affirmation in terms of, I'm going to go forth and I know God will give me the good parking place. I know He'll give me the nice apartment. I know He'll bring me the money I need, etc., when I need it. Everybody? Yeah. Yeah. But that's not what it says. It says, I go forth in perfect faith in the power of omnipresent good to bring me what I need at the time I need it. That means all the trials and tests and missed parking places and things that just didn't go your way, because those also are part of what we need. They're part of what we need to wake up. We need the challenges. We need the moments of blowing it. We need the times of trial and testing to awaken a fortitude and awaken an understanding and experience of our lives, this beyond the pleasures of the senses and the pains of the senses. And if we do not practice these things when it's easy, you won't be able to practice it when it's hard. If you do not practice gratitude when it's easy, gratitude not just for the things that are pleasant, but for the things that are difficult, you won't be able to practice it when it's hard. It can be even simple things. I remember my mother telling me a story when I was a young man. She had the karma. She invited 4 children into her life. She ended up with 2 boys and 2 girls, and as the boys grew up, they were boys. And she tells the story, it was a very sweet moment, because she'd been on a campaign for, I don't know, maybe about a year to get the boys to put the toilet seat down. And she was a little bit crabby about it. And we were managing to ignore her just fine. And then what happened was a friend of hers came over, and her friend had been married twice or 3 times, and each time her husband had passed away. And she was living alone, had been alone for quite a number of years. Very joyful soul. Grace was wonderful. But she came singing down the stairs one day when she was visiting. And my mom said, "What's up, Grace?" And Grace had been to the restroom. She said, "You know what? I just had the greatest experience." She said, "The toilet seat up means that there are men in the household." And she was just so thrilled to be in a place that had male energy, had other energy. And my mom said it changed her in that moment. It just changed her completely. Simple things that we make an enormous amount about. It's often easier, at least up front, to raise our energy up to meet the big tests. But to not put out the energy to meet the difficult things in the moments, in the just ongoing moments of the days. And really, at the end of the day, and at the end of this life, our reality is a composite of those moments and nothing else. It's just a composite of the moments of the days and how we responded.
Telephone was ringing.
Yes, Swami Kriyananda was giving a talk to 700 people. And in the middle of the talk, they'd asked that the phones be turned off. It was in India, and it's insane over there with cell phones. And they'd asked that the phones be turned off. And there, in the middle of a great moment of his talk, a cell phone went off. And he stopped. And he seldom does this, but he stopped and he said, "Could we please turn off the cell phones?" And he seldom allows himself to be interrupted. But the phone kept ringing. And he looked down, and it was his.
It was Swami was giving
And he just laughed. He said, "Divine Mother, that was a good one."
your cell phone, and then he reached in his pocket and he realized it was his.
We have, this is just our school. It's just our school. It's our classroom. We come here for a very short period of time. It seems like a long time. When you're young, it seems like it's going to be eternal. As you get older, you start to realize how elusive time really is. And I assume as you get older, I mean, years pass like days used to. And you realize that it isn't about time, it isn't about the things you thought it was about. You start to realize that it's really about something else. It's really about the condition of the heart. There's a science fiction book. It was written by Robert Heinlein, and it was called Time Enough for Love. And the principle, it's a long book, it's a great story. It starts with Methuselah's children as the short story that leads into it. And if you're really bored sometime and you want to have a fun read, it's a great read. But the principle in it is there's a group of people who, through kind of crossbreeding experiment of the human race, just end up being able to live for a very, 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 very long time. And in fact, the hero is kind of lived for about 1,000 years at this point, and he's bored. He's done everything. Because think about it, if with enough time, I mean, our old joke is with enough time and money, you can do anything. But with enough time, there's nothing you can't accomplish. Think of the loftiest goal, and if you could just apply yourself across time long enough, there's nothing you can't do. Nothing you can't do. And the premise of the book, just boiled down, save you a lot of reading, is that if you don't, right now, if you knew you were going to die tomorrow, what's important enough for you to do? What would you do? What would you choose? And what would you choose? What's really that important? The car, the boat, the job, the raise? I mean, none of it. There's nothing you can pin enough satisfaction on to make it worth your while. And the same thing is true if you're going to live forever. If time is irrelevant, what's left? What would you do? And he just says, you discover that all there is time enough for love. And if you allow love to fill your heart, devotion to fill your heart, gratitude to fill your heart, then nothing else matters. And if you don't, really, nothing else matters. We'll end with a little reading from Whispers from Eternity. Karma is just the balancing of the different movements of energy, and you can wash out karma. There's nobody who has not had their prayers answered. And there's nobody who's discovered that in those answered prayers there aren't the things that you wish wouldn't have come along with the package. But if we turn our hearts toward God, and this is really an encouragement for the wise to discover, I was the least likely person to ever talk about God growing up because it didn't connect until I read the autobiography of a yogi and I finally understood. And then through the experiences of meditation, I started to realize that in God is true. Everything awakens inside of us and our lives become full in the presence of Spirit. And then the masters mitigate our karma. And of the billions and billions and billions of things that we have, seeds that we have sown, the only ones that need to grow and come to fruition are the ones that we personally need still to continue growing spiritually. And so the masters, in God's grace, mitigate the rest of those karmas. And even the ones that grow that we need, often the power of them are tremendously mitigated. There's a story in the autobiography of a yogi of a man sitting around the campfire or the sacred fire with Babaji and the disciples. And in the middle of this moment, Babaji reaches into the fire and he pulls out a stick with fire on the end of it and coals on the end of it and reaches over and pokes the man on his shoulder. And, this is the spiritual teacher. This is God's, representative taking a stick. Just think about it, sitting around a fire and Swami or somebody reaching in and pulling out thing and poking you and burning you. And, the devotees kind of had a little bit of a stirring and a little bit of a protest. And Babaji's response was very sweet. He said, would you rather him be completely immolated in this moment as was his karma? He needed the little touch. to help his soul continue to refine. But the rest of it was mitigated. When we become disciples, when we become truly committed to the spiritual search, the whole purpose of karma is to get us to turn toward God and to realize God. This is number 224. Just a moment. Okay. Thou art the cause of everything. I bow to thee. Dear Heavenly Father, the moonlight reminds me that all darkness passes. The sun reminds me that my mind too should be bathed in light. The seasons change because that is how I can have food to eat. The seasons change also to teach me to adjust to all life's changes. Thou art behind everything, teaching deep secrets for living a better life. Always I bow to thee. We'll have some music now.